Okay, I did not record the beginning of this. That's okay. Let's start here. What do you see when you open a website? What are the components of a website? What are the parts of a website? I'll start. There's the title of the page. That's one thing. Anyone else want to shout anything else out?
The header.
The header. Thank you. Perfect. Anything else? You have some images, you assume. Body, images, text. Oh, I love it. Text itself, body, images, pictures. Anything else? Get creative. Buttons, yes, perfect. Videos, timestamps. Ooh, that one's nice. Links, yes. What else? What else? Okay. Pop-ups, beautiful. Okay, this is a pretty good list, but you can get even wilder. You can have nav bars. You can have citations. You can have embeds of other websites. And the list goes on and on and on and on. So a website is a lot of different things put together into one unit. All of these things are what is known as an HTML element, a small chunk of HTML that is designed to do some specific thing, display some specific thing. Some of these are built into the language. For example, a title or a header is something that HTML will give to you out of the box. Some of these are not. A pop-up or a nav bar is not just out of the box provided to you by HTML. But we can use the things that are provided out of the box by HTML and adjust them to make these things out of them. Today, we'll be focusing on that first category, the things that are out of the box. And eventually, we'll slowly build up to making things that are not quite out of the box. Okay, so I talked about this element, this HTML element that all of these technically are. And these elements in this language are demonstrated, presented as one thing. That thing is known as a tag. Tags are what define different types of elements on the web page. And each tag brings with it some properties. One of the most obvious properties is how it will look on the web page. Here on the slide, we can see a pretty good example of that. There's the P tag, which is the paragraph tag that looks like normal text. But then there's also the H1 tag, which is the heading 1 tag, which is the biggest heading possible that you can put on a web page. Then there's the H3 tag, which is slightly smaller heading, but also a heading. So it's bolder and bigger than the text. And then there's the H5 tag, which is still a heading, a header. So it is still pretty big and bold, but it's smaller. The font goes down. And we didn't do any of this. HTML out of the box does all of these things for us, which is sort of the power of this language. Okay, before we proceed, any questions? Seeing none, I'll be moving on. But as always, questions, shout them out, drop them in the chat. I'm keeping an eye. So, as we're talking about these tags, a general pattern of how these tags are made emerges, which is tag name and then something inside, and then the closing tag name. Notice the difference between tag name and the closing tag name is this slash right here. The opening just has the tag name and the closing has a slash before the name. If we go back real quick, P/P, H1/H1, so on and so forth. Quick note, this pattern is almost always true, but not quite. The underscore is just for those two words to be read properly. We could have used camel case as well. Sorry if that was confusing. The underscore is just aesthetic purposes. Okay. Let's keep going. We have not already done attendance, everyone who is here. We will do attendance at some point in the middle of the lecture, just to make sure people aren't dropping in, doing attendance and leaving. Alrighty. Let's get into some live coding. And this is going to be exciting because all of you get to see the entirety of my desktop. Woo! All right, let me share my entire screen and let's get going. Let me also not share sounds. You guys don't have to listen to all the ringing sounds Zoom decides to make. All right. Can everyone see my lovely default Mac screen? Lovely. Thank you for letting me know. Open up with me here your default code editor. I'll be using VS Code. Oh, let's make sure you guys don't see my 162 homework, but I'll be opening VS Code. And what we'll be doing is making a new file called lecture.html. I'll be saving this on the desktop just so, oh, that's not the desktop. The desktop, just so it's easy for us to navigate and see what's going on. Okay, let's save this.
Well, so we have to do a new file?
Yes.
Went a little too fast.
We're creating a new file in your code editor called lecture.html. You can create this however you want, however you are most comfortable. The easiest way is to go to your code editor, hit new file, which is right here in file, and then Control S, save, add lecture.html.
And where do we save it to?
Anywhere you want, as long as you know where you save it, as long as you can navigate to it. I put it on my desktop because that's the easiest. Alrighty, let's use some Zoom features. When you are here, when you've gotten to the point I am at, please add like a yes next to your name. It's in like the React feature that Zoom seems to have. Perfect. And when we reach some sort of majority, we'll move on.
What are we doing? Sorry.
Once you are done, once you're at the point I am at, which is create lecture.html and sit there with the file, just put in a yes next to your name. Right. Let's wait just like a couple more seconds and then we can get going. All right. I feel like that's good enough. All right. Thank you everyone who responded. Yes, I appreciate all of you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to write some fun programming. Let's go back to our slide and start with some example HTML, which is this thing on the left hand of the screen right there. Take a look at it because it's going to go away in a second because we're going to navigate away and write this in our files. Okay, good. Let's go. So here's how we're going to write it. First, we're going to add the doc type HTML. HTML is not a case sensitive language. So you can write it in uppercase, you can write it in lowercase, you can write it in like the weird Wiggly case where you alternate. It's all good. Okay, so what does this line mean? It tells the browser that the file that we are working on is in fact an HTML file. And that's simple as that. Notice how this also has no closing tag. It's an open tag, but there's no close tag to close it up. This is our first exception to the every tag has a closing tag rule, which is a bad rule because it got broken in like 3 minutes. Regardless, let's keep going. Once we've added this, we'll add our HTML tag. Notice how my prompt gave me the closing tag by default. That's because VS Code has some code helpers known as Emmet, but we don't need to worry about that. You can add that by default. But what you want to have is HTML and a closing tag that says HTML. We're going to write all of our HTML in between these tags. In between these tags is all of the HTML that goes in here. Okay, now we're going to add a body tag. Ooh, I saw a very interesting question. This was something I was going to mention later, but you know what? Let's move it here. I imagine all of you want to annotate this document in some way. That's very good. There's a simple way of doing it, which is open, exclamation point, dash dash, and then it'll give you a dash dash close if you are using a text editor that does that for you. And you can write whatever you want in here. Most editors also have another cool thing where if you hit command on your computer and hit the question mark slash the slash button, it will generate the comment tags for you. If that didn't make any sense to you, that's okay. We'll just write tags. Okay. Before we move on, any questions? If you did not get any of that, please be slightly brave and say that out loud. Okay, I'm imagining everyone is along with me here. Beautiful. Now, inside of the HTML tags, we're going to make something known as the body tag. Notice how I am changing the case. You would want to stick to one, preferably lowercase. The reason I am doing so here is to demonstrate that it does not matter. All right. The body tag contains everything that goes on the screen once you open up a web page in a browser. On that note, let's do that. Let's open up the web page in a browser. And because we're working with just HTML, there's a very convenient way of doing so, which is to go to our file, this lovely file right here, and double click. And there we go. Let me quickly open it up in a way that is good for lectures. Beautiful. So what do we see on this file right now? Nothing. The correct answer is nothing because we haven't written anything in the body code. Let's put something on our screen here, shall we? Let's add an H1. It says, "Hello world." Woo! And let's reload our web page.
Oh.
And here we go. Congratulations. You've just started writing your first ever, possibly, HTML file. And let's add a P tag as well, which is just text. So we're going to make it say text. And we're going to reload again. And whoo, okay. Okay, y'all. We're good to go. We're off to the races. Once more, let's do that thing where you turn the yes button on if you are with me. And if you are not, please turn the cross button on and let me know what's kind of not working and I can help you out.
I have a quick question.
Go for it.
So I typed in everything, but when I go to my file online, I'm not seeing any text on the screen itself.
Make sure that the file here is the same file you are operating in here. And make sure to save and then reload.
How do we save?
Control S or Command S, depending on which software you are in. And how do you open this file is another very interesting question. You navigate to it right here, wherever it may be saved in your Finder. You can go in your Finder, then look at all of my files, then go to desktop and open up lecture.html right there. So double click this and it will open it up for you. Oh, look, it opened it twice. Okay. Excellent. Any other questions? Questions, please. Questions, comments, notes, anything at all? Beautiful. In that case, we march along because we have barely started, folks. We are going to keep talking about all of this. Now that we're done with the example, the next step is to add links. And the way you add link is through this A tab. It's called A because at first Links were known as anchors on the internet, so to speak. Everyone thought you would anchor yourself to a link and then anchor to someone else. It's weird, but that's a relic from the past. And with this A tag, we define an href, which is a link to where we want to go, and add some text, which is displayed here. Href is the attribute that points to the link's destination, and the text checkout WDB is the content that the user sees. Now that we don't know that, let's go back and add a link to our website. The link says, well, first it goes somewhere. The link says, hi, I am a link. Where should we make it go? Web at Berkeley, always. There you go. Now, if you click on this, oh, y'all are gonna make that someday. Currently, we're just at this. I think it's just that's good. Okay, we've added a link to our website. This is exciting. We're actually making a web page connected to the rest of the internet. Any questions? All right, in that case, let's keep going. Now that we've added links, what's next? Let's spice things up a little bit. Let's add some color to it. Let's add an image. So we're gonna add an image to our web page. A couple of notes about images. It accepts an SRC attribute, which is pointing to an image somewhere. It can be a local destination, as in a file that you have saved within your project folder and you're navigating to that, or it can be an HTTPS off somewhere on the internet, which is what we're going to do today. You also have the alt attribute, which is displayed if the photo is corrupted. You can see an example right here. Therein the icon is corrupted and you get the icon alt text instead. And a very important note, the image is a self-closing tag. So as you can see, instead of having a close /img, you just have the slash within the original image tag itself. That's because you cannot put text inside of an image tag. HTML gets mad at that.
Ask a quick question.
Yes.
So when it says that the SRC is displayed as text if the image is corrupted, do we have the inputs as separate line so that it shows up like that, or is that just automatic?
That is automatic. So what we will do, we'll code it up real quick, which is img. SRC is something, alt is, let's put that as something as well for now, and then closing. All right, now let's add the link. I've already set up a convenient link for us to use. And let me drop that in the chat as well for everyone coding along. Rebecca, I see your question. Let me answer it real quick. Thank you, Andy. All right, and let's add some alt text, which is Berkeley Marina, exclamation point. Now, reload. And you see, we have this lovely, very ill-fitted picture of the Berkeley Marina pop-up.
Are we supposed to be following along in our text?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let me know if I'm going a little bit fast or a little bit slow. The link, oh, I'm sorry. I seem to have set it to singular person. Oopsie. There you go. That is what you want to add to your web page. Perfect. All right. Now, an interesting thing is when the image loads, you don't see the alt text, which is by design. It's not a caption, it's alternative text. So let's break the image. Let's instead look for a Berkeley Maria. Any Marias in here? And now you'll see what happened is that the tiny image icon popped up, which is HTML's way of telling the user that something broke here. And then the alt text popped up, which is pretty great. And this alt text is also used for people who can't see the website or instead perhaps listening to the website. So it's very important to add alt text to your images. Always add alt texts. All right, questions? Yes, the image element does become an inline element when the image breaks. That is very insightful, Amir. That is correct. You'll be learning about how elements are arranged in relation to each other in, I believe, just a week. And then you'll see the difference between inline and blocked images. Okay. We had a quick question there, which is this web page, when you click it, it opens it in the same tab. That's kind of bad. That's not fun. You have to navigate back every time. How do you make it open somewhere else? Well, we're using another attribute to do so. The way href is an attribute, there's another attribute known as target. And you want to assign it to _blink. This is not some weird knowledge I have. This is just convention that you will most certainly pick up on as you keep coding. All right, let's load that up. And look at that, opens in a new tab. All right, questions? All right, in that case, we keep marching along. Woo! Let's talk about unordered lists. Sometimes on a web page, you want to make a list. Maybe you're making groceries, who knows? How do we do so? We do so with this UL tag, which defines an unordered list, and every element of the list is defined by this LI tag right here. So let's make a grocery list, shall we? Let's give it a heading. Let's give it H2, groceries, exclamation point, and then make a UL. What do you guys get for groceries? Carrots, I guess. Cheese. As you can see, I'm not a very healthy eater. Tomato. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, let's save that, reload that. Look at that. We have a list of groceries. Excuse me. Alrighty, questions? Also, if everyone would be so kind so as to on their yes signs again, if you are keeping along. If you are running behind, I can go over things a little bit slower again. Excellent question, Kamal. Is indentation obligatory or just good convention? Well, let's find out. Let's break everything and yeah, still works. So let's get that back, but you should indent because it's good to do so. In the words of a great teacher named John De Niro, if you write code that doesn't look good, you might as well set it on fire. Okay, I see a few questions in the chat. Thank you everyone for asking. The first one is, why does my image not load? Excellent question. It's because I broke the link. It's supposed to be Berkeley Marina.png and I changed it to Berkeley Maria.png. Let's set that back to Berkeley Marina and ooh, that's an image. Let's change that back to Berkeley Maria so we can see our web page instead of seeing one giant image. There we go. Beautiful. All right, another question. What is this target equals underscore blank doing? Great question. Just like href, this target is an attribute and you can set it to many things. Here, what we're trying to set it at is underscore blank, the string. And that is because we want this link to not just open in this tab, but to open another tab for us, which it does because this line right here exists. Your image is bigger than the website because the image itself is very high def. And when it loads, we're not sizing it in any way. We're not telling the web page to make it smaller. And so it just gives it to you full size, exactly as it's packaged. And that is very big for our web page. Instead, if we used a smaller image, we wouldn't have that problem as thoroughly, but that's okay. We'll be dealing with resizing images in 2 days, in fact. So that's very fun. All right. Please do keep asking your questions. This is great. Slides are available in the Slack in the announcements channel. On the big message that I posted, maybe like a couple of messages behind. I sent a lot of messages. But yes, slides are available and for your viewing. They also have additional stuff if you're curious. Okay. Yes, this is completely my fault that I fully forgot to post them even faster. I should have. Your slides are available typically on the reading. So if you go to your reading, which is the HTML one right here, the slides are right here. But yes, we will make sure to post them as a quick announcement in the channel as well. Okay. A couple people seem to be having some troubles making things appear. Right now, just make sure to control save your files. If control save or command save is not working for you on Windows and Mac respectively, hit file, scroll down, hit save. That should do it most certainly. This is a good breather. Any other questions? Any curiosities? Not even questions relating to debugging help.
I have a quick question.
Go for it.
So when you were creating, the 3 lists, the LIs lines, is there a way to quickly create it, or do you just have to, push enter new line and then type it again every time?
You have to type it again every time, unfortunately. There are some coding assistants that will help you out with those, and we will set you up with those a little bit later down the line. But for now, we are doing it manually. What I can do for you is add this to the chat. And then you can just copy and paste it. And that should be pretty easy.
I have another curiosity related question.
Go for it.
So when you think of like huge websites like, Facebook, Twitch, Google, YouTube, all these big ones, what's like the first, like, where do they start in their code? Do they just start like this, where it's just like the header, the body, and just go down? Or is there a certain way to start a code for a project that big?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. The very interesting thing about websites like Google or Facebook is that they don't write most of their code the way we're doing right now, because most of their details, like groceries or carrots, that's not written by them. That's written by us, the user. So what they do is make a skeleton for, say, a post that looks like this chunk right here, like the groceries chunk. And then they just wait for variables to come in. And then they populate that skeleton, that template with those variables, and put an infinite amount of chunks of that on their web page.
So it's very like variable run, I guess. Just
yes. Imagine what we're doing right now, but every piece of detail we write is a variable. And that is how big websites work.
Interesting.
The indices are completely syntactical. The font color here is very interesting. That is VS Code helping us read properly. What is happening here is that everything that is a tag is a dark blue, everything that is a string is an orange, and everything that is an attribute is a light blue. And everything that is just plain text is white. And the comments are green, of course. This right here being an exception. An attribute is any one of these things that you may pass into a tag, IMG being a tag, SRC being the attribute of that tag. You typically give an attribute a value using the equals notation, and then you equals it to something. Here, we're only using strings, but sometimes numbers as well, very rarely so. Rebecca, you're absolutely correct. You use the relative path. If we have a little bit of time by the end of this lecture, I will live download an image and we can relative path it out as well. Okay. Whew, that was a great series of questions. Thank you, all of you. It seems like we're about halfway through our lecture as well. So everyone, if you would be so kind as to write the word, let's do hello world, one word, into the chat. That is how we're tracking attendance. So please, if you are here, make sure to do so. Hello world, one word, no spaces. I'll give everyone a moment to do so. I'll repeat, hello world, one word, no spaces.
Is hello world solely from like the Apple presentation back in the day, and is this that popular now?
Not quite, actually. Hello world has some very fun origins. No one knows where it's from. It's been existing since the early 1960s, since they made the first ENIAC. And one of the first things they ran on that machine was the ability to display hello world, because they wanted their computers to say hello. It was kind of cutesy in that way. But no one knows who wrote that. No one knows why they did that. That's just one of the myths about where hello world came from.
Okay.
But every program you write for the first time in any language, do it with hello world. All right, everyone, last call for attendance. Easy peasy to do it. You just write hello world, one word, into the chat, and that should get you good to go. All right, if you're curious, there is something that I did on my own as well, which was something I maintain, which is writing hello world in every language I know. It's kind of fun. I would recommend doing it somewhere out on the internet.
Is that every coding language or just every?
No, every coding language. It does only count for coding languages. Otherwise, it's less fun. Okay. Very fun. Let's get back into programming. So last we left off, we were working on unordered lists, which is very fun, very nice. We made a grocery list like so, added some things to our list, carrots, cheese, tomatoes. I don't even know what that makes, not even dinner. But then there's this sentence right here, which gets a little bit interesting. An LI, which is a list item tag, can only be placed inside a UL, which is an unordered list, or an OL, which is, well, an ordered list, as you may have guessed. The unordered list is your bullet point format. Your ordered list is your number format. So let's also make an ordered list. Classes. What classes is everyone taking? Drop them in the chat. And tell me interesting ones. Everyone's taking 61A. So we'll add that. I'm taking 162. I don't know if anyone here would be taking it, but say hi if you are. 61B, I imagine. The Q is a class all of you may be taking. I saw a sad face next to it, so we're gonna add the sad face too. Class I would highly recommend, not available this semester, but next semester, is Astro C10. Very fun. Highly recommend as a class. Oh man, Douglas, you're the best. Full stack dev. Oh, heart emoji. Oh no, the heart emoji didn't. Okay. Should be fine. Let's reload the website. And there you go. The only thing we've really changed between our grocery list and our classes list is we changed the UL to an OL. And that's about it. Let me also put this in the chat for anyone who may be wants to drop that straight into your web page.
A question.
Yes.
After we type in a tag, does there need to be a space between the dash and the input itself, or can we just no space it?
Do you mean between this? Like,
Yeah.
No space necessary. You can add it, but it's not required. Okay, questions? Wonderful question. Here's something very interesting that happens in HTML. William, by the way, great question. Which is if I do something like this, it reduces all these spaces to one space, which is very strange as something that HTML does, but there's no working around it. So what you must do instead is go and Google HTML space, the ASCII character. And then that would give you this lovely HTML escape code for spaces. Then you can paste that in there, and that should give you some spaces. This is typically not behavior that I would like to encourage, but for now, if you want to add spaces that it doesn't let you add, that's how you should do it. William, did that answer your question? Spaces didn't pop up. Okay, we're going to debug that in a second. But TLDR, the HTML like squeezes down all the spaces to one space if you add many of them. Okay. Any other questions? In that case, let's talk about this web page. It's pretty okay. But there's a little bit of a problem, which is that we haven't left many comments here. And as good, great civilians of the internet, what we must do is keep adding coding tags. This is just your disclaimer. This is me going on the soapbox and saying, add comments. Because code is written first for humans to read and occasionally for machines to do so. Okay. Quickly going off the soapbox, we're done there. So this UL tag and this OL tag right here, they are letting us know about something pretty interesting, which is that tags can be placed inside other tags. Sometimes some tags can only be placed inside other tags. And that gives us this hierarchy of sorts in HTML itself, wherein the OL tag is one thing and the UL tag is one thing and the H2 is over the OL tag. But notice how all the LI tags are inside the OL tag and kind of make it one chunk the way we want it to. We also want to make the OL and the H2 tag a chunk, probably. Why? Because they kind of belong together. They're the title of the thing and then the thing itself. So how do you chunk these things together? These things that don't necessarily have some default way of getting stuck together like LI and OL does. Brings us to our next point, not comments, but divs. Divs are generic containers, and you'll use a lot of them very soon. The idea behind div is to design the layout of the website. So let's do so. Let's add a div around the H2 and the OL tag, a div, and take this other half of the div and put its closing after the OL tag. This is probably the most confusing part. I'm going to also tab everything, but you do not need to do so. I'm going to copy and add this in the chat for anyone who wants to keep along. Okay, so the thing that's super interesting that just happened here is that by adding this div, let's reload the web page and see if anything happens. Nothing happens on the web page for now. But on the background, what has happened is that this heading and all of these list items, this list here, has now become one chunk. And then when you move on to like coloring your web page with CSS or making things interactive with JS, getting things chunked together like this is extremely important. In fact, let me show you something cool. I never showed you this, okay? Everyone, this is like off the record. But if I were to add a little bit of CSS really quickly and set the background color to red, look, it changed both those things to red. And that is the power behind divs, that you can treat 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 20, 30, 50, 80 different things as one element. And that makes things simple for us. Okay, questions? Roman, I see your question. Do you mind clarifying what you mean?
Yeah, sorry. I see a lot of abbreviations, for all these tags, div, ul, h, and I know they mean longer things, but where can we find a list of what these mean fully?
A good place to start would be the HTML reference for Mozilla. They are a group of people who write some very good tutorials and maintain some very good syntax, and they can give you information about every tag out there ever. And that will be helpful too. I will be giving all of these links in like a post-lecture announcement. So if you're a little bit confused about all of these, don't worry. Okay, let's add more divs as we're kind of chilling here. Let's add a div around the groceries too, because why not? The grocery heading in the grocery list is also one unit. And let's reload that and notice how that does not change anything either. And let's take it a step further. This groceries div and this classes div are also in some way together as lists. They have this super category of lists. So why not add a div around both of them as well? And as we're kind of doing this, what we're doing is kind of revealing the core power, the core truth behind HTML, which is that it's just nesting of different tags. And the more you nest and the clearer your nesting is, the better your website will be to navigate, both as a user, both as a developer, and as someone who may one day look at your code on an industry level. Okay, any questions? What I just did was very fast and perhaps a little bit complicated. So questions? Okay, quick sanity check. Let's do the yes thing one more time. Douglas, amazing question. They are for CSS as well as for JavaScript. Sometimes you want to do something to a div, like change the color of a div when someone clicks something, or sure, use it as a button. A crazy world. Okay. Quick reminder, if you're keeping along, please add the check mark so I can get an intuition of how many people are still along, how many of you have given up, and just general feedback. I'm very glad to see a lot of you are still along here. I know this gets out of hand really fast, so feel free to stop me and ask as many questions as you want. This is like the skeleton of your knowledge of the internet and websites. So let's get this right. Andy, you have hit upon an excellent question, something we don't reveal until lecture 2. But since you've asked this, I'm going to do so. There are 2 ways, in fact, to naming divs. In fact, there's 2 ways to name any tag. The first way is to give a tag a unique ID. So I can ID this tag as all lists. And that is a way to refer to that tag in CSS and JavaScript. And I can ID this tag as grocery list. And you can use the small dash in the tags as well. And there's one more way, in fact, to refer to these tags, not just divs, but any tags, which is the class attribute. Douglas, great question. Let me get back to that in a second. The class attribute can be used or shared by many different tags. So I can classify all of these things as lists. And what that does is make some sort of connection between all of these, where they have this shared property class that they are a list, and then we can do something about that. Maybe we want to give every list the background color purple, and since everything is tagged as a list in a class, we can do so. Okay, can there be a space in the ID string? That's an excellent question, Douglas. There's something very interesting that happens in the ID when you add a space. And the unfortunate answer is no, you cannot have spaces. That's because this gives this div 2 different IDs, one all lists and the other lists. So if you add a space, you're making 2 different IDs. Similarly for a class, if you're adding a list, you're making 2 different IDs. If you're adding a space, you're making 2 different classes, the list class and the main class. Okay, that was a tangent. Any questions? That is correct, Rebecca. That is perfect. An ID is unique to one instance of a tag. You cannot have the same ID on 2 different divs. So this tag cannot have the ID lists because this tag already did. And that is the power behind IDs, which is like you can pinpoint one specific thing as a very unique thing and refer to that. The difference between IDs and classes is that ID is unique to one tag. Classes can be shared among many different tags. So this div is a list, and this div is a list, and this div is a list, but only this div is on all lists. Okay, questions? William, excellent question. Yes, people do. And that's because sometimes a list or an element can be multiple different things, and you want to give it multiple different powers between CSS and JavaScript, so you give it multiple classes. Okay, any last questions before we chug right along? Just a little bit left. Okay, now we're chugging right along. On the note of setting the scene for future things like CSS and JavaScript, remember how we talked about how JavaScript makes websites interactive? One of the ways of making anything interactive on a website is adding a button. So you are going to now add a button that you can click. Let's add buttons. The way buttons work is the button tag. Surprise, surprise. Let's go and do so. Let's do it beyond all of our divs right there. Let's make a button tag that says, click me, exclamation point. Let's save that, reload that, and look at that. And the button tag is very similar to the div tag in that you can basically put anything you want inside of it. So we can put an H1 element, ooh, that's gonna be big, inside of it that says, click me. Save that, reload that, look at that. Okay, that's a button that shouts. Okay, questions? So there's one thing we must talk about, which is this button doesn't do anything right now. That's because HTML isn't designed as a language that does things when things happen. That is JavaScript's role. HTML's role is to put that on the display screen for you to see. And we've done that today. So wait a week. Well, when the JavaScript lecture hits, then we can do weird things when buttons are clicked. But for now, we just display it. Okay. Questions? All right, then let's wrap this up. Today, we worked mostly, oh no, not mostly, completely in the body tag, which is this tag right here. And that's because we wanted to make changes that we could actually see on our website. But not everything in an HTML file is things you can see on a website. So let's run a quick demo, like a quick thing that we can do. All of you, do this for me. Go to your browser of whatever sort you want and search for webdevatberkeley. I'm not saying this to increase our SEO, but please do so. Okay. Once you do so, you will see this text right here, which is Berkeley's first organization, meaningful stuff. Okay, you get the idea. I want for all of you to take a minute, go to the website, and find this text on the website. Go for it. Go, do it. Go find this text on the website. And if you're looking at my screen or your screen and doing so, and you copied it and pasted it and searched for it, here it is. And that's very good. But that's not the first thing on the website. It's like this, all of this is the first thing on the website. So why did Google pick this up and make this the text versus any of this? Why does it not say builders, creatives, and entrepreneurs in here? Okay. With that question posed to all of you, we're going to talk about metadata, which is what Google and all these different websites rely on. Metadata is data about data. Roman, great question. Emojis, yes. Images, no. Metadata is data about data. And what that means is it's the thing that is in your HTML file, but isn't seen in your HTML file. It's just for the browser and Google and everything that interacts with your web page to know something about your web page. And as such, it doesn't go in body. Body is all about what gets displayed. So there's a tag missing here that it is now time to add, which is known as the head tag. And what the head does is allows you to add metadata about your website. So when you reload this, you'll see nothing has changed by us adding the head tag. Inside of the head tag, we're going to add first the title tag. And let's call this lecture 1 demo. Save that, reload that, and you may think nothing has changed, but in fact, something has changed. Can anyone? Does anyone see what's changed? Okay, we'll give it away. Yes, thank you, Amir. Exactly, right there. Let's quickly comment all of this out and go back and see what was there. It was a lecture.html, which is just the name of the file. Well, once you add the title tag, lecture 1 demo. So as you can see already, things are changing, not on the web page, but in the browser, the metadata is affecting things. And beyond this, there's also the meta tag, which allows you to add many things like descriptions, which says this is a web page information point. Save that, reload that. Again, nothing changes, but this meta tag allows you to go ahead and add some data that the browser now knows. And if we were to put this website on the internet, Google would read this and use this to display it right there. All right, questions? And while we're looking for questions, let me quickly play around a little bit. Ah, look at that. Do you guys see the meta tag on the Web Development Berkeley's lovely website? Web Development Berkeley, as you see, Berkeley's, and that's what we just saw there. So the meta tag is information that lets the browser know information. And you can see there's a lot of meta tags here. We won't be talking about any of these today because all of them are kind of irrelevant for today. But eventually you could learn about them if you want to over the internet. Okay. Questions.
A general question, not exactly related.
Rose up here talking about something this unique deserves a second look. What it deserves is a unique.
Oh, sorry. I had a quick question. I had a pop-up link. When you expected elements on a website, you can basically see their entire code, right? Or at least their front-end code.
Sure.
I thought companies are only like, if you just go to Facebook and inspect their elements, you can see all the front-end code, right? What's hidden?
It's kind of interesting. You see all the front-end code, their code generated. So you don't see their templates and you don't see the way they generate all that code. What you see is what you get on the web page. So you see their code, but you won't get like the secret sauce that runs their website. Okay. Amir, could you elaborate on your question, which is why didn't we set the carousel? We could set the carousel for sure. And this is a very important thing to do usually. But the reason we don't typically, or the reason we didn't do it here is because we're just building an example website. But yeah, good point. You should set your character set using your metadata, which is describing which characters you can use. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll wait for any questions. As I do, I'll kind of talk a little bit, just weekly, no more information. Which is that there's a lot of tags to play with. We've introduced some of them, but this is not even 10% of every tag out there. I'm discovering tags to this day, and you'll learn so many more in your life as a developer. So don't worry if any of these look unfamiliar or if you don't quite remember what we did. These are very easily lookupable, however you want to call it. And if you want to learn about more tags, there's many more we've mentioned in our Notion reading document right here. There's so many more that you can talk about, look at, get interested in. But you don't have to. Today we've introduced what I would call an overwhelming amount of tags. We'll stop there. Let's not introduce a nauseating amount of tags. All right. As we kind of talk about this, we're about at the end of all the new information that I'm going to introduce in this lecture. So if you have any questions, please bring them up now. All right. One last note then, and then you're free to go and stick around for questions if you want to. But the last note that I want to kind of really talk about is HTML is secretly just very aggressive categorizing. Notice how we put like divs inside of divs, and then we tag them as classes, and then we tag them as IDs. And really, all HTML is like very aggressively tagging things and categorizing them and making sure a web page looks like something that flows properly. And as long as you can put things and other things and club similar things together and put dissimilar things apart, your web page will have a structure that is easy to navigate as a user as well as a developer. Okay. With that, we are at the end of our first lecture. I will be sticking around for the next few minutes, the question, if you just dropped in, the code is hello world, which is, sorry, Mary, did not see your question in time. Hello world. All right. Yes, please do say so if you haven't already. Beyond that, thank you so much for coming. Make sure to submit your first assignment by Thursday. Make sure to attend the first couple of lectures to make sure you're not dropped out of the class. And I will see you all next time. All right, have a good night, y'all.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Have a good night.
Hey, I have a logistical question about attendance.
Go for it.
Attendance is required, but I have like another commitment every other Thursday at 7 p.m.
Do you mind sending Alex in the Slack a message that he will be handling the logistics of recurring conflicts, and hopefully the two of you can work something out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem.
I have another question about like content. You mentioned you gave a really quick demo of the CSS where you turned the div red.
Yeah.
And you said that was CSS, but you did that in the same file. Like you did that in a .html